All right, so it's a real pleasure to welcome Luke Campbell, who's the founder of Vexed. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. That's
No
pretty
worries.
exciting.
And it's a bit unusual because normally I do these interviews face to face and in person, but of course, everyone is in lockdown right now, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but but fortunately, we do know each other, and so that helps because having seen you face to face, I think Zoom is quite good after you get past the initial meetings, isn't it? It's then a tool that can be used, but it's those first meetings it's more difficult.
yeah, definitely. Maybe Zoom is a little bit less useful as of late. I've got a lot of business contacts and the likes who are using it less and less because of the security kind of scandal that's ongoing, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see how it develops. So, what we do on the podcast is talk about people's lives and their journeys and sort of hear about where they're from and then try to understand how that's led to what they're doing today. So, in your case, it'd be great if we could go right back to the beginning of your life and just tell us a bit about where you were from.
yeah. So I grew up in Christchurch for the most part. When I was quite young, going to preschool and things like that. I moved around throughout Canterbury a little bit, but I ended up settling in Christchurch with my dad when I was 7, and have spent the rest of that I guess my childhood growing up here. Yeah, so I went to Beckenham Primary School, which is a really good school here in Christchurch, and then Cashmere High, which is I really um, I think really highly of those schools in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And what was your childhood like? Like, paint a picture of yourself, like, even back in primary school. What sort of things did you enjoy?
I
And was
honestly,
technology
yeah,
part of it? Because obviously you're in a sort of tech business now. Were there hints of it back then, or?
yeah, very much so. I think probably one of the biggest recurring themes for me when I was growing up was I spent so much time on the computer, so much time playing computer games, and that's probably true of most people my age, or even more so people who are growing up today. I probably from the age of 7, I think, and this is definitely from what I know, it's probably a lot more than most. But from the age of 7, I think I probably spent 6 to 12 hours a day on my computer. Um, I think I got into one of the first games that I really got into when I was really quite young was World of Warcraft, which was still is pretty big, but it was probably the most popular online game in the world back then.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So would you call yourself, do you think you would be like a digital native? That's sort of a phrase that people use, or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I spent so much time just engrossed in these games. I mean, it probably would have been fair to say that I was a bit of a gaming addict when I was growing up, but yeah, it's definitely a digital native. I was, regularly from that young age, I would regularly kind of fix my father's computer, and he wasn't in like a non-technical role or anything like that. It just happened that I'd done more exploration and more troubleshooting, I guess, on that kind of stuff, and so that kind of I suppose I'm definitely a digital native.
Mm. And what was it that drew you to those games and that was there a sense of community with people you were playing with, or were there other elements to it, or?
Yeah, I couldn't be too sure. I mean, definitely a sense of community. I mean, I was, there was adventure and community and maybe a little bit of escapism, if I'm honest. But I mean, I met so many people that I had, ongoing, even if they were online, but like friendships for years and years. And I'm still in touch with a few people that I met such a long time ago. It was probably a bit weird for quite a lot of the people I met because I was definitely one of the younger people on kind of World of Warcraft and a lot of other games.
Mhm.
Most of the people that I met whilst playing were, in their 20s or much older.
Mhm. It's really interesting though, thinking about the generations that pass and what we grew up with, because I'm
Mm.
older than you. So I remember I had what was called an
Yeah.
Atari game, and
Yeah.
these were very simple games. They involved, like, the frog jumping across the road and making
Yeah.
sure the car doesn't hit you, and like it was very, very yeah, but they were of their time, I guess. This is sort of late 1980s, and
Mm.
it was pretty cool at that time.
Yeah.
But now it's advanced so much further, hasn't it?
Hey, yeah, I think that's true. But in saying that, there are some of these things are really timeless. And you mentioned, the frog jumping across the road, and I think there's a game out there. I could be wrong, but called Animal Crossing right now, which is one of the most popular games in the world, I think, and
Wow.
that is basically a recreation of what you just
Yeah,
described. So,
right. So things
yeah,
come in circles.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So just describe, in terms of the earthquakes in Christchurch, like obviously there's lots of things have happened in this particular city.
Mm,
Can you just describe what that was like for you? Like, where were you at? And yeah, how did that impact on your life? Because it's now
yeah,
almost, yeah, not quite a decade ago, but getting close to it.
yeah, long time. I so the first earthquake hit in September 2010, and I was just finishing up the my first year of high school. Um, from I can remember it pretty quite well. I actually slept through the earthquake because it was at something like 4 a.m. or
Yeah.
and I slept through it, and I all like my I have a vivid memory of just my father like banging on my bedroom door, which happened to be locked, and waking me up. And I couldn't. I was surprised, taken aback. I was like, "Why is he waking me up so early? I'm exhausted."
Mm.
Um, and he was just shouting earthquake, and I didn't really know what to think, or it was kind of like that groggy feeling you have when you've just woken up, and then I felt an aftershock, and it was just unbelievably surreal.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, this might be weird. I'm not sure, but I and it's because I was so lucky. I was never in a situation where I was ever in danger during an earthquake. I never had any experiences where where I was in immediate danger. So I don't know why, but I actually kind of enjoyed the sensation. It was so new and exciting in a lot of the ways that like a roller coaster ride, I guess, is exciting and thrilling. In the February earthquakes, I it was a Wednesday, and school was ending early on Wednesdays for sport, I think it was, and
Right.
so I literally sat down on my bed at home the moment the earthquake struck, and yeah, it was really it was a really weird experience. And then obviously it was a horrible situation for the whole city, and uh, from
Mm.
then on, Kashmir started doing site sharing when the school reopened with another high school, and uh, so we were going into school quite early. I think we started lectures at like 8 a.m. or something like that, and finished at 12. Um, and yeah, it was a really weird experience for everyone, um, including myself. Um, I had friends whose homes were unlivable, or whose in the rare occasion that their houses were just destroyed. So
Mm.
it was troubling times. The most vivid memory I have is of one aftershock. Shortly after the February earthquakes, I was just walking down the street, and the aftershock struck, and I think it was like a six, and I could just see the road rolling in front of me like waves, with like just rising, falling by meters, and it was just the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, well, it had a huge impact on so many, didn't it? And just thinking about that age that you were as well, like, um, how do you think it's affected your own, I guess, your own thinking? you know, like I was kind of grown up. I was actually living in Tokyo when it hit, and we had
Mm.
the earthquake that hit Japan. So it was quite almost 2 weeks later, you know. But I'm
Yeah.
just curious, yeah, how do you think it's shaped your own thinking, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, the environment in Christchurch is such that we had these earthquakes, and so much of the city was destroyed, and we've gone through this process of rebuilding the city and kind of coming to a point where we're finding almost a new identity for the city, I guess. And that process of such a rapid change in my environment, and I'm sure this kind of probably rings true for quite a few people in Christchurch, is that like change has almost been a constant in my life in that respect. And so I guess that I think in a lot of ways that's probably helped me to you know deal with change maybe more comfortably, I guess. Is that
Mm.
yeah.
No,
um
it's understandable, particularly because we're about to talk about your startup, and
mm,
startups, as you know better than anyone, are you know, there's ups and downs, right? There's
yeah.
you have to be pretty able to withstand things, and I think if you've been through an experience like the earthquakes and being in a city that's recovering and kind of, I think it probably would, this is the reason for the question though, but I think it probably would shift your mindset a little bit in terms of that. One of the things I've noticed is that I think people in Christchurch are maybe a bit more willing to try things because
mm,
they've kind of seen, you got one life, right? You might
yeah.
as well try your best. And if it doesn't work, well, you tried it and it didn't work, and then you move on to the next thing. And I think the earthquakes helped people to really understand how important it is to just get out there, because life is short, and it does go by really quick, and it's not until those big events happen that you kind of are forced to question, what am I doing here, why am I here?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Mm, yeah. So just talk us through then in terms of getting to the end of high school. And did you know what you wanted to study? Like you went to Canterbury University, so stayed local. Did you have
Yeah.
a particular area you were always interested in?
Yeah, I mean, so just for maybe a little bit more context, and I don't tend to talk about this so much because it probably doesn't instill a massive amount of confidence in probably the people that I usually talk to. So I was, because in part because of the amount of time that I spent playing games and living kind of online in my childhood. Like I didn't do well in high school. In fact, I didn't get NCA level 3, which was required for university entrance. But I knew that I was going to go to university, and I knew exactly what I wanted to study, because as well as playing all these games, and I spent a lot of time on YouTube and watching documentary after documentary, and in particular, I found a real strong passion for space and cosmology, and I spent um, a lot of time watching documentaries of the like of Cosmos by Carl Sagan, um, which really inspired me to kind of study physics. And I knew, from 15 years old, I knew I wanted to study physics, and um, then I really started following, I guess, Elon Musk and SpaceX in particular, because it was so exciting. And rockets are just absolutely amazing, and
Mm.
that kind of, I guess, compounded my passion for science and physics and all of that kind of area. And so yeah, I am still studying at the moment, and I'm doing physics, and I managed to find myself studying economics as well somehow. So yeah.
Oh, interesting. So someone like Elon Musk really appealed in terms of what he's done, and it, it, he seems amazing to me how many diverse interests he has. You know, it's electric cars, and it's you know, tunnels to go underneath the structure underneath America, you know,
Yeah,
like hypersonic
yeah,
tunnels, and then, oh, let's go to Mars. And yeah, such a diverse range of things, right?
yeah, definitely. I think you know, one of the things that holds true throughout all of the stuff that Elon Musk is involved in is that um, for the most part, all of his companies and the projects he regularly finds himself being a part of are, you know, crazy ambitious. You know, the things that either, if you ever said, "Hey, I'm going to go do this," people will say, "You're crazy. You'll never be able to do that," or you know, something along those lines.
Mm.
He's you know, gone from um, building a rocket company which lands and refuels and refurbishes, you know, these rockets that go through re-entry. And I think everyone for you know, a decade and a half until SpaceX landed their first rocket, said they would never ever be able to achieve that. Or you know, Tesla, obviously, prior to Tesla's success, electric cars were thought of as kind of boring and ugly and um, um, you know, not realistic. And then the lots of other things, like you mentioned, the Boring Company, and that's probably you know, that's a really difficult challenge that they're trying to overcome with, you know, right now I think it's something like $1 million per meter, or I mean, I'm probably wrong on that statistic,
Mm.
but it's very very expensive to drill underground, and so
Yeah.
they're trying to bring that cost down, obviously. And then companies like Neuralink, which Elon Musk is obviously involved in heavily as well, you know, trying to create an interface between computers and humans, is, yeah, it's really crazy stuff.
So he would be somebody, though, that I guess the point is, at that younger age, a little bit younger
Mm,
than you are now, was someone that you thought actually they're doing some pretty cool stuff entrepreneurially, but
yeah,
also with physics, and maybe I could do this.
yeah, I definitely, I think I definitely was inspired by Elon Musk from, you know, maybe from the business perspective, but I mean, maybe that's simplistic, but I just really liked watching rockets take off and land.
Yeah,
That was, yeah, I mean, I found that just amazing, and that probably fed or helped create interest in business.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny what inspires us, isn't it? On the podcast, I often talk with people, and sometimes it is those like childhood TV shows, you know, like
Mm,
I love Star Trek, and now
yeah.
I am involved in space, or, you know, there's often
Mm,
those links between what you enjoyed
definitely.
um, in your younger years. So
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit about Vext, and, you know, how did that start? I know you've been involved with UCE.
Mm,
Yeah, what's the journey been like? I remember seeing you pitch at one of the events quite a long time ago now, like I'm thinking a year ago. So
mm.
if you could just talk us through, I guess, how you got involved in that, you know, being a student, but then starting something new. And then I'd love to hear about what it is that you're doing today.
Yeah. Um, so if we, you know, wind back quite a while to um, my initial kind of involvement in the with the UCE and trying to get into business, I basically came to the UCE with, you know, a ludicrous business idea that uh, you know, was pretty crazy. And James Carr in particular, just gave me a lot of support and mentorship and guidance. And I ended up studying a doing a course which he taught called Business 290. I think it's an of 290 now, and that was all about starting. It was all about entrepreneurships and new ventures, and I learned a lot throughout that process. And I started. It taught me to think about business as solutions to problems, which I guess I hadn't really thought too much about prior to that. And uh, I ended up near the end of that course. I received a few voicemail, and I thought, yeah, this is the worst experience I've had with technology in a while. And that led me to start working on Vexed, which initially was kind of a simple idea of converting voicemail to text and displaying it in a mobile app. I wrote in my co-founder, Lucy, who is a computer scientist. She's actually sitting behind me right now.
Yep.
And we both were lucky enough to receive more support from the UCE in the form of scholarships to work on that idea over the summer. And we did the summer startup program, which that was a part of, and kind of did a whole lot of research and talking to people who got a lot of voicemail. And and it kind of just went from there. We launched a minimum viable product in August last year, and today we've got probably close to 3,500 monthly active users, and now a team of 11. So it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, no, that's really good though. It's been fun watching your journey, because I'm based here in Christchurch as well, and seeing you pitch at different things, and the UC summer one, but then other ones you've done as well, right? So yeah, it's been cool to see you progressing and watching the journey and being able to help with little bits and pieces and privacy policy, I think, and terms and conditions and some of the stuff like that, right? The nuts and bolts that you need.
Definitely.
So can you just tell us a little bit, like you've mentioned the voice to text, and just describe maybe what was the pain point that you saw there and how it is that it actually works? What is it that you're actually providing?
So the initial pain point that we came across was really that keeping up with voice messages, for especially when you're someone like a tradesperson, a small business owner who is constantly working throughout the day and might be going from meeting to meeting, or in a situation where you're an electrician or something similar. You're going from job to job, and you often can't answer the phone, and you can't quickly check your voice messages because just for a variety of reasons. And so to I guess improve on that pain point, to provide some kind of a solution, we decided to build this mobile application, which today what we do is take our users' voicemail, convert the messages to text, and then do things like email forwarding. We utilize natural language processing to detect when messages could be important and highlight that for our users. We just released Vexed for Slack, which allows people to check their messages through Slack if they prefer to do it that way. And then we're working on some really interesting stuff at the moment, including providing kind of a personal assistant digitally for our users, in the form of basically an IVR system, which will answer your phone for you and communicate to callers. Things like maybe you're in a meeting at the moment and you'll be free in like half an hour, anything like that.
Yeah. Great. So it's really using technology to the best extent you can, right? And making life easier.
Definitely. I mean, phone calls and voice messages is something that really I don't think will go away. People like to communicate in a variety of different ways, and voice is one of them. It's a massive part of our lives, and it's a massive part of business as well. It's really easy to miscommunicate when you're communicating by text, and voice gives you that extra dimension of emotion and all of the other real subtleties of the human voice, and I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, I agree completely, and that's why I do the podcast rather than sort of having the written
Mm.
transcript of the interview. I think the word is so important. And these days, the podcast gets a couple hundred listens to every episode. And I know
Yeah.
that people are enjoying the connection of actually hearing somebody explain their life story in their own words. And there's something about just hearing the way people express themselves. You can actually really connect a lot more easily than, here's a paragraph written, which has its own place, but the voice is
Yeah.
really, I agree. So just talk to us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. You've been
Mm.
through these accelerator programs and things. What would you say are some of the key things that you've learned on your own journey, that, using your time machine and you go back and talk to yourself as you're first starting out, what would be some of the things that you wished you'd known?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question, and that's a hard question to answer. I think I'm not so sure if there are things that I wish I knew. Maybe I think there are some important things that have really helped me a lot, and you know that's like being persistent and not giving up on things without enough. Uh, yeah, um, I mean, early
How are you
on, it was
coping?
really.
How are you
Yeah.
coping right now? Maybe just to keep on that we're right as we're recording this in the middle of COVID-19 and the lockdown, and like how are you finding that you're able to stay resilient and keep going um, through challenges like this?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, one of the big parts of the way I guess I cope and keep on top of my own mental health is trying to keep exercise as a big part of my life. Making sure I'm going on runs or whatever that looks like. It could literally just be doing a few press ups or whatever. I find that helps me out a lot, and it's really important that you know I keep myself healthy because one of the biggest things that I'm responsible for is making sure my team are feeling good and are staying on top of their health and um, so that they can do the best work that they can.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. I mean, just making sure you're still having fun. My flat and I, just for context, I live with 6 other people, so it's a big group and not so much of a big house. And the other night we had a decades themed dress up kind of party and played beer pong. It was the first time I'd really had more than a few drinks in quite a while, so it was yeah, and it was great way to kind of relax and bond with my flatmates and take a break, I guess.
Keeping things light in the midst of
Yeah,
the heaviness of whatever you're going through.
exactly. Yeah, I'm someone who always tries to lighten the mood in tense situations. I've got a Nerf gun at work, and I consistently will shoot my employees when they're least expecting it, just because it's important to have fun and making sure that everyone feels comfortable, um, you know, joking around and yeah, I don't ever want anyone to feel like they can't have fun at work because that's really important. And yeah, it's important to me.
Yeah, no, that's good. And in terms of your future plans or where you see Vext heading to, yeah, can you describe a little bit about that? And I know you just said that your team has grown quite a lot recently, right?
Mm. Yeah, so there's a lot. There's a lot of things that we're working on in terms of, I guess, a broader future for us. I mean, I think telecommunications in general are really moving toward digital and non-physical, um, uh, if that makes sense. Landlines are becoming less and less common, and I
Mhm.
think more and more we are seeing business run kind of from the palm of your hand on your phone, and I think telecommunications is really heading in that direction as well. So I think more and more we'll see um, uh, I guess, business phones and things like that turning into, applications and software where today they might be, copper wires and buttons. So that's what we want to be a part of, and I think we've got a great team to really do that. I think there's lots of different areas that could be really interesting for us in the future, including like artificial intelligence and yeah, I'm honestly, it's pretty open. Um, we'll just, yeah.
Just see what comes. It's interesting though, the things you identified there, like the landlines becoming less common.
Mm,
Sometimes when you're filling in a form, you get to that point where you put your contact details, and I'm
mm,
always kind of laughing because like, you know, mobile, home phone, fax,
mm,
and I just,
mm.
I'm not going to put my fax number. I'm not going to put we don't have a landline. I have my
Yeah,
mobile number and that's it. So
yeah,
it's a real
exactly.
shift though, even from 10 years ago.
Mm.
Those would have been like, of course you've got a landline. Everybody has them. So yeah, it's
Yeah, of
interesting.
course. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, people in the telecommunications industry right now are regularly speaking about what's being called a race to the bottom in terms of prices and what what hosting, say VoIP, voice over IP phones online allows companies like ourselves and heaps of others that are in this space to do is provide business phones at like a quarter of the price that is currently out there. So there's it's moving really quickly, and I guess with everything right now, technology is really allowing for such a just rapid pace of change.
Yeah. So let's put on your future hat now, and it's 10 years from now, it's 2030. What do you think will have changed between now and then in that sort of area? It's a very wide question, so you can go whichever direction you want.
Yeah. I think, 10 years from now, I think we'll see things like, and lots of people have seen it, like a viral video of what's called the Google duplex. It's a system where a human operator is basically unable to determine that they're speaking to artificially intelligent uh, reproduction of a human voice. So
Right.
Google Duplex is able to, make bookings at restaurants, order takeout over the phone, answer queries from customers in real time, and come close at least to appearing like just any other person. And I think 10 years from now, that will be we'll probably be there where
Mm,
um, where I think customer service agents, is, at least over the phone, will be uh, probably totally replaced by systems like Google Duplex.
mm. So you'll somehow input, I want to have dinner at 8 o'clock on next Friday, and the system will then take over. It will make the phone call to the restaurant. The person
Yep.
picking up the phone at that end, assuming that's how they interact,
Mm.
won't realize that it's not an actual person. And they'll
I,
say, I'd like
I
to make a booking for Stephen Moe at 8 o'clock, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I think more than likely you'll be walking. Say, just as a hypothetical, you're walking in the afternoon with your partner, and you're speaking with each other, and you're like, "Let's go out to dinner tonight at this restaurant," and then you'll probably pick up your phone. And Google Assistant you'll say, Google Assistant, hey, I want to get dinner tonight at 6:30 at this place, and then Google Assistant will make that call for you, make that booking, and probably on the other end, they probably won't speak to a human. I would guess it'll almost be another system like the one that's making the call, answering and automatically scheduling that booking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird to think about, but I suspect probably I suspect that kind of thing will be really quite common within probably 5 years.
Yeah.
More, more so than 10. I couldn't tell you what 10 years will look like from
Yeah.
now, because the the scale of kind of change is probably, yeah.
I know, it's so quick, isn't it?
Yeah.
You wouldn't even think like 5 years ago, it's probably changed a lot since, you know, what
Yeah.
was available in 2015 versus 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of this podcast is it's a moment in time, and it's likely maybe in 80 years or something crazy, somebody's going to watch this video or listen to the podcast and hear us talking about this new technology and think smiling to themselves. They just had no idea.
I'll be like, yeah, oh, that's so,
Yeah,
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 that's so old or something. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's really interesting, and I guess only time will tell. But yeah, I mean, I think I would probably welcome being able to to have Domino's delivered at like, a 10 word long phrase.
hmm
And I think a lot of people are afraid of what automation could do to things like unemployment, but I think probably what's happened in the past is that as jobs have been automated away, new ones have kind of appeared, and especially in things like the service
mm.
industry. So yeah, I think we'll probably see more of that. Hopefully, the people just have more time on their hands and we're able to do more things that we're really passionate about, whether it be hosting a podcast or going on a hike. Ideally, that's what the future will look like.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, it's been great to talk with you just to hear a bit about your background as well, because I love, hearing about your own immersion into computer games and your background there. And then
Mm,
it's kind of, you can see, okay, there's a natural progression into what you're doing today, but then also hearing about, where you are now and then where you're heading in the future.
mm.
So yeah, I just want to say thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing a bit of your journey, and we'll watch with interest, and maybe let's do another one in a couple of years and we'll see where it's all gotten to.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks for having me. I mean, hopefully, we were able to create something interesting with this, and I look forward to listening to it myself.
Great. All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cool.